Welcome to my cake masterclass. Today I'm going to share with you how to stack, crumb coat and decorate a cake all from beginning to end. We're going to start off with our two baked cakes. So I've got two exactly the same size, and you might notice that they're looking a little bit round on top. The first thing that we're going to do is to cut off the top of those cakes so we have a perfectly even layer to begin with. I'm just gonna hold the cake with one hand. I've got my left hand there because I'm right-handed. And then with my bread knife, I'm gonna hold that on the side there, and without really moving the knife, I'm just gonna use the left side, so my left hand, to rotate the cake, and then leaving that serrated knife there to push through nice and evenly without really doing too much movement at all. And then we have a perfectly flat cake layer into the cake, because then we're gonna have crumbs going everywhere. It really is just like a clean sweep on the top. Okay, so now our cakes are ready. It's time to make our buttercream. I'm gonna start off with my unsalted butter, and then I'm going to whip that up really nice with the paddle attachment so that it's nice and light and fluffy before the icing sugar goes in. Most recipes favor a 1:2 ratios, but for my buttercreams, I like to increase the ratio a little bit more on the butter so that it's nice and glossy and just kind of like has a really nice full body flavor. Pop that butter in and turn it on to a medium speed. We're slowly going to increase the speed. While that one is beating away nicely there, I'm just going to sift my icing sugar. Really important to sift the icing sugar instead of throwing it straight in the bowl, because you will notice that icing sugar tends to get quite clumpy, and the last thing you want for your buttercream is these big chunks of icing sugar. I like to use a spoon just to push it through a little bit quicker. I am a little bit impatient, I'm not gonna lie. And then once all that icing sugar is sifted, the butter should be nice and glossy. It's also going to turn a more pale color as it sits there in the bowl and keeps beating. I'm also gonna stop it a couple of times just to scrape down the sides of the bowl. Wear half the butter on your hand, I don't know. Food fashion. All right, so we're going for this really nice glossy texture. Keeping that on a low setting, I'm just gonna add the icing sugar a spoonful at a time. And then just keep going until you have used all of the icing sugar, and then back to high speed. The last thing we're gonna add is a little bit of vanilla extract, just to give that a really nice vanilla flavor, especially because this buttercream is going on a vanilla cake today. All right, there we go. Nice, glossy, ready to go buttercream to stack our cakes. You do have a choice when it comes to stacking your cake. You can stack the two cakes that are this kind of larger, thicker size, or if you wanted to, you could do the same technique just using that bread knife along the side of the cake and then cut these layers so that you end up with 4 layers in total, 2 from this cake and 2 from the other cake. I don't find it super necessary. It really depends on the event and like what you're making a cake for. The cake today is for me, so we're gonna go with 2 layers. And the first thing I'm going to do is get some of that nice buttercream and then just dollop it in the center. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is get an offset spatula. This is one of my favorite tools in the bakery. It just makes it so much easier when you are dispersing all of that buttercream and pushing it out around a cake. Also, when you're icing the sides of a cake, the offset spatula is definitely, I would say, the one tool that we use the most in the bakery. So I'm just using that to spread the buttercream around the cake, and I'm gonna add a little bit more. It's always easier to add a little bit more than to be stuck there taking it all off. So I always like to go slow and just go for that perfect ratio, a nice big layer of buttercream in the center, and then we're going to cover the buttercream over the cake on the outside. So we don't want too much in that center layer because the whole cake is going to be covered in buttercream. So you can see there I've pushed it all the way out to the sides while keeping it nice and level, and then just keeping that offset spatula nice and balanced as I move it around. Now I'm gonna grab my second cake, and all I'm gonna do is flip that over the other side because I want that beautiful, nice, flat edge of the cake that's already been baked in the pan. And then all those crumbs are gonna lock inside because they're gonna be pushed together on that layer of buttercream. I'm gonna give it a little light push down just to make sure that that's nice and even. and then always rotating the cake so that I can see that those layers of cake always line up because we want them to be perfectly uniform. However, not everyone has a cake turntable from home, so I'm going to show you this second layer without the turntable. It is possible. I actually iced a cake in a hotel once. It's a little bit harder and more rigid. This certainly would make it a lot more smooth and easier to do, so a lot quicker if you're using a turntable. But if you don't have one at home, it is doable. I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's doable. Basically what a crumb coat does is it traps in any of those remaining crumbs. So we've got all of the crumbs from where we have cut the cake. They are sandwiched between two layers of the cake is hitting the buttercream. So we've got this nice little sandwich going on for most of those crumbs. However, this extra crumb coat really just allows you to make sure that any outlying crumbs are all trapped inside. So we're gonna do this one without the turntable just to show how it is done. And I'm just rotating the cake as I keep pushing that buttercream out towards the sides, just like I did with the center layer. Just takes a little bit longer as we go one turn at a time. And then all I'm doing with this layer again is making it nice and even and flat. And then what I want to do is use some more buttercream along the sides of the cake. Just kind of working your way around the cake. I think the trick to icing a cake is just to make sure that every single step you do properly rather than rushing ahead to the next one. Because if you've got two perfectly even layered cakes and there's no variation where they can kind of move around and the buttercream starts to kind of go on a bit of a lean. If you've done each layer perfectly, then it definitely is a lot easier as you keep stacking each part of the cake. Always just adding enough to trap those crumbs in, but we never want to do too much because I don't want to waste any of this buttercream. So now we are going to attempt to crumb coat without the turntable. I'm a little bit nervous. No, it's fine. I have done it before. It just takes a little bit more time. So if you can see that side of the cake, here I am pushing away that buttercream. So as I scrape around, I'm actually going to scrape with my right hand and turn with my left, just so I get a nice bit of momentum there. And I'm really just scraping off the excess because we want all of that crumb coat on the cake to make sure that all the crumbs are stuck in. But we also don't want to leave any excess because it'll just make it so much easier when you get to the stage where you are decorating the cake, it has chilled in the fridge, and then we're ready for that next exterior layer. You really want a smooth surface to be working with. So I'm just gonna scrape in the sides of the cake there. So there we have it, our crumb-coated cake. It's ready to go in the fridge. It does need to set for about an hour or two, so before we go on to that next layer, we want all of that buttercream to be nice and firm so that when we decorate the exterior of the cake, it looks good, basically. Okay, now that one has chilled in the fridge, I've got all of my buttercream ready. I'm gonna place this straight onto a turntable. So we're gonna go for a nice lavender color. I really like this brand, it's called Color Mill, and this is just the one that we use in the bakery all the time. It is an oil-based color and it works really well with American buttercream or any high-fat buttercream. So that's the one that I use. And what I'm gonna do is just separate some of this buttercream because I won't need it all. In terms of how much color to add, roughly a little couple of those guys. I don't want to use too much color or it's really going to intensify the color into like a more purple, and I'm really aiming for that nice soft lilac lavender color. So I'm just going to mix that buttercream in with the color, and I want it to be fully incorporated, so I'm going to give it a little bit of love. So there I've got that beautiful, nice purple color, and then it's gonna go straight onto my already crumb-coated and chilled cake. Just nice and gently, I'm gonna place that on the top. All right, then I'm just gonna grab this offset spatula, and then nice and gently, I'm just pushing that purple buttercream all the way out to the sides. And what I want to do here is make sure that all of that buttercream is free from any bubbles, it's nice and smooth. And then also we're looking for a really nice, even top layer on the cake. Any excess I can just scrape straight off into this bowl, and then also reusing that buttercream to go straight onto the sides of the cake. So then I'm just placing that buttercream down the sides of the cake, pushing down any of that excess that I've scraped off from the top. So now I've got my cake scraper. I did run this under some hot water just to make it nice and warm, and that will also help with making sure that the sides of the cake as I scrape along are really nice and smooth. Next thing I'm gonna do is just scrape the tops of the cake, pushing in towards the center. All right, all the sides look really good. I'm just gonna give this another go on the top layer to make sure it's extra smooth. And then I'm just gonna push any of that excess out towards the sides because we're gonna pipe those sides and cover any of those extra trails. So for this one, I'm gonna use an open star tip and just place that straight into a piping bag. I'm gonna grab my plain buttercream and then just place it inside the piping bag. And because I've got this little cup action happening with my hands, I've got a lot of control over that piping bag. And then I'm also making sure that by not going any higher than where that lip sits, that I'm not putting too much buttercream into the piping bag. Last thing I want to do is give this a nice little twist at the top and make sure that all that buttercream is pushed down into the bag. And then I'm going to give it a little push there. Starting at the bottom of the cake, I'm just going to do a little lift and release. As you can see, the buttercream is really nice and glossy. That is because the ratio of butter to icing sugar is a bit higher. And I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the top layer of the cake, but I'm gonna go in the other direction. I'm right-handed, so it's easier for me to go towards myself. The last thing I'm gonna do is add a little bit of extra piping. I've got a smaller star tip. This is the open star tip again, but it's a little bit smaller. Okay, so this time I'm gonna go around through the center of the cake. The first thing I'm gonna do is start by marking the cake. I'm going to put the first one right in the center of a straight edge of the cake, and then I'm gonna go equal parts either side, and then just keep making my way around the cake. And this will basically help me as I pipe the cake to go back to the same spot every time, so the round half circles go up in a similar fashion all the way around the cake. And then it's a little drop down, so it's a nice little semicircle, and then coming back up towards that marker. So back to the larger open star tip. All right, so every one of those peaks, I'm gonna do a nice little shell to finish it off. Perfect. So then we've got our nice little frills along the outside as well. Obviously, there's so much more that you can do to decorate these styles of cake. You can get the same smaller open star tip and do another row all the way along the bottom. You could also add some different colors, maybe a light pink or a mint green, just to keep complementing that cake. It really is up to you. The list is endless, but they're a really cute cake for birthday parties, for any celebration, and people always love them. They are the most popular cake in the bakery. I hope you guys enjoy making these ones from home.